So, hi everyone. Thanks for coming. My name is Marko Bogdanovic, and I would like to present today a project that me and two colleagues did together, like during December, and it's called Webtags. Web as like web or internet network website, and tags as like graffiti. First, shortly about us, I will first introduce myself, I guess. I'm a bit new, I think, to like web development or something. I started learning some 14 months ago when I discovered FreeCodeCamp. My plan is to actually like do it on some professional basis, but I still think I have a bit to learn and I have some portfolio to finish. So this is what I'm working on right now. And my background is actually like film and video and photography. Otolaj is the third of us who is not here. Otolaj, maybe is better pronunciation. He's, I think, 19 or 20. He finished high school, I think, in the last year. Now he has like a gap year and he serves his like civil service till September. And I think he's also learning something around the year. And yeah, and I guess his plan is to continue studying like some informatics or computer science, as it's called in English. And the third member is Andrei Sidorenko, who can say about himself something, I think. Okay, he will introduce himself when he will have his own part of the presentation. So that's about us. I was thinking maybe it would be a bit interesting shortly to say something about how this Webtags project came about. And it started in November when Daniel and Robert organized a meetup when it wasn't actually about presentations, but it was about people coding together. And afterwards, it was like my first experience coding with some other people, and it was quite interesting in many ways. And afterwards, I was talking with Daniel about why there are no hackathons really, or at least as far as I can say, happening in Vienna. There was one which was supposed to be in autumn, but then it got cancelled because there wasn't enough people interested in that, I guess. And then I was thinking on the way home simply like that it would be really great to do something like that, like to code with some people or do some hackathon, but I really don't know enough people yet in Vienna to be able to organize anything like this. So I was thinking like how to make something similar happen, and I had the idea that maybe it wouldn't have to be like a competition between teams, but it would be just like one team that realizes some idea that we kind of like decide on together. And I posted an announcement to a Facebook group of FreeCodeCamp Vienna, and a couple of people answered to it, and then we met, and it was originally 4 of us who met, and we just threw some ideas on the table and we discussed them and brainstormed a bit, and then we came with the idea for this thing that we call Webtags now. So show a short demo. Webtags is something like an application or a service. I can say like now we only have like a very simple, basic working prototype, but it works. And the idea is that it's a service, let's say, but it's like a bit too strong word, I think, that allows you to post a message and leave a message on any website and read messages that your friends left there. And as you see this like green thing, I'll try to do a demo. This is like the interface for leaving the message. And it works like the principle is that you basically create an account with us, like of course for free, just with your email. Then you search for people, find some people, become friends with them, and then you can leave those messages, and those friends of yours can access those messages besides you. And I will now post one to show you just simply how it works. It's like nothing super special, but something. Oh, shit. I think our server is sleeping, so it will probably take some time to wake up. Yeah, you see, like, I'll refresh the page now. Yeah, this is like, we didn't do really any work, basically, I would say, on some like user interface. So this like to create a message and to like read those messages like mingled together. So it's maybe confusing, but this is the message that I like just posted. Yeah, this is how it works. Like, for example, if I would go somewhere else, like, where can we find some? Yeah, it's simply like the point is that it reads the URL in your address bar and saves this in the database also with some other information, and only on that URL you can see those messages. Like, hopefully, yeah. For example, I have like one of the tags that I posted earlier was like, for example, this one on Medium. Yeah. So I will just like very briefly say like what this project like technologically consists of, and then Professor Andrei will take you through the guts of some deeper layers of the project. Yeah, back to this. Sorry, this one. So basically, it's the JavaScript script that gets like injected into a page, and that renders like this interface and all those messages. Like it makes requests to server and fetches all those messages from our database, and that script is injected into all those pages using browser extensions. Now we like work with Chrome extension, but our plan is like eventually to do at least also a Firefox version. But I think it's theoretically extendable also to like all the major browsers that do support this like classical extensions API. And of course, like this like front end part communicates with server, which is a Node.js application, and we use database, and in our case, it's a MongoDB database. Now Andrei will come and do his part.
Okay, my name is Andrei. Thank you for giving us possibility to give this presentation about our project. So in principle, I joined the project, as Marco said, in November when we discussed what we are going to do and how we are going to apply our skills in programming and teach ourselves how to do that. Actually, in programming, I'm not new because I started many years ago from such old languages like Fortran and even assembler. So, but then I didn't do for many years because I worked in physics and did many things there. When such language like Python appeared, so I started to work with Python because it was very useful for my purposes in physics, just very useful for plotting and for data analysis and so on. And recently I just started to think about having fun with programming, and I found that JavaScript now is quite great language and one can do many things, and I discovered that probably I need to do something with that. And that time, actually it probably was in September, and fortunately Marco appeared already quite soon, so we met and started this project. Okay, as Marco already said, so this was considered as an application to communicate between, just at the beginning it was considered like leaving some messages on the website. So, but of course it's not that exciting just to leave a comment on the website for yourself. So, and we decided just better if we are extending it and have these messages or commands for groups, for available public and also for friends, and actually where it can be applied, why it can be interesting. So the first idea was just we can leave the comments or say some ideas on website like a news website. On this website, in principle, you can leave the comments there, but usually it's pre or post-moderated websites, and you need to register there. So you need, and all these messages can be only public. So you cannot leave these messages there for your friends only or for some special groups. So our Webtag application allows these all things to do, like for small communities or for yourself or for just for friends to leave these comments. Okay, so as Mark already mentioned, this application consists of a few layers. The first, or the top layer, is the lightest layer, which is called extension, and it's in principle on the browser side. And it's responsible for all these operations with signing up and signing in, up and out. And also the main purpose of this extension is to load the client script, which is the next layer. And the client script is made for just displaying messages, or say it's just a user interface. And in principle, the client script is supposed to be uploaded by the extension. So the client script should be stored on the server side. So the next layer is the server script, which is responsible for sending and receiving all these requests from the client script, and all these APIs and middleware points, and also for communicating with the database. So it's just normal REST APIs, which like put, gets, and post, and so on. And it does it gives a response in JSON format, and also, as I said, it's communicates with the database, which is stores all the information about the users, groups, messages, and also authentication information. And this all for layers. And in principle, at the beginning, we thought that probably it's necessary to just to write one extension and do not split it into extension and the client script. But then we found that it can be quite difficult to write all these extensions for all different browsers. So in our case, we have a client script which does all the job for displaying the messages, but the extension is just a small piece of code which is very easily to transfer between different browsers. So, okay, now everything, all these layers and what we use for making these different scripts. So, in principle, the client script is written in JavaScript. Also, this HTML, CSS is the main languages what we use there, and this server script is Node.js and Express.js, and database, as Marco already mentioned, we are using MongoDB, and for keeping this database we are using MLab. And now just a bit about how the database is organized, because this is also quite important part. I'm not going to too much into detail about all these scripts which were made, like server script and the client script, because I think it's too much to show about this code. But here the database, so it's because it's MongoDB is non-SQL database which is not relational database, so it's just contains few different tables. So, and the main table here is the users table, which contains the name, email, and password, all this authentication information. Then we have this session, which contains the cookies. It means that when you're registering or when you're logging in, all these session cookies are created and they are stored on the server side. So the server always checks whether you're allowed to access to some certain APIs or not, and gives you some possibility to reach different APIs. And also separated in tables like friends, groups, and messages. Messages, another main part of this database, which contains the text of these texts or messages, and also users which created these texts and users for whom it was created. And in principle, this how the piece of code looks like. So I don't want to speak very much. I just want to mention about this using Mongoose, because people quite often, as I can see, because I'm new in JavaScript, right, but I can see, and I'm quite surprised why people don't like to use it, because it's just a simple way to connect the server side, or say to work in Node.js with MongoDB databases. So as you can see here, all these fields which we have in the messages table. So this text created forward means that for whom it was this message was created, then URL, and also created the creation date, and created by whom it was created. So all the because this database is not a relational database, it's necessary to link it to the other tables. And here you can see that, for instance, created by, it's referred to the user data user table, and it allows just by knowing the ID very easily to find the username and all the information of this user. On the other hand, it also allows to link it dynamically. For instance, here just a couple of lines allows to refer to different tables in the same database, like groups, users, and friends, and so on. This is how it looks, just a static method for finding messages, knowing just, in this case, ID of the user and the URL of the user. So it's you can see here is a chain structure, chain-like structure, and it selects some certain fields in order to send it to the client, and also just as I said, dynamically populates with depending on what the request is, like it's messages for the groups or for the users or for the friends, and also it populates, instead of IDs, it substitutes IDs by names from the different tables. Okay, this in principle how it looks in the database. This entry, one of the entries. So here you can see it was created for the groups and with the ID of certain group, and for the URL. And okay, this is just one of the user. So, and you can see that the password is encrypted, and in principle, yes, this is a standard thing, which is can be made with encryption package and hashing package, just standard thing. Okay, so I think Marco can continue, because just too much details in the code. I don't want to just take your time about the code. If you have questions about the code, we can just speak later and discuss all these things.
I don't know how to continue exactly. I'll show you. Maybe it didn't seem like really very exciting or something. I don't know. It depends on your fantasy, maybe I would say. But if you get just a bit creative, you can get to things like this, for example. This is what I left on Robert's and Daniel's page. Like if you go a bit down, this is one of these are two messages that I was just like toying around with. This is not a picture. This is not just a picture. This is like this CSS drawing. If you ever saw this kind of things, like this is also I didn't create this Frankenstein. I only like copied in a very crude way parts of the Frankenstein picture by one girl who is I think a bit like one of these like authorities in this like CSS drawing. Her name is Sasha Tran. Maybe you can find this like Medium post about her. Doesn't matter. Like this is just like inline HTML, and this is just like a simple text with some style. Like here you can basically like really just copy paste some inline HTML, and then it will. Now it's not protected yet, but then it will like create anything like this, for example, that I showed you, or for example, yeah, here. This is just like toy stuff that I just need. Yeah, but it can also be as simple as I showed like before, like these things like that, and then you see like who posted it, and then the text of the message, and I don't know, like for example, now I would imagine myself using it. I like to use like SoundCloud a lot. I'm happy it survived like 2017, and I really like to listen to these like long sets there, and I just like to bookmark like some songs, for example, but it's not really divided, and when you have too many comments, then your like bookmarks there like get like really down in the comments, and it takes a lot of time to load and blah blah. And I thought like maybe I could use like this thing for just like leaving some kind of marks for like the time codes of those when my favorite song starts or something like that. Or for example, when I don't code, I cook. So for example, if I find some recipe that I really like and I don't have something, and then I try to replace it with something else, and it works out like well, then I would leave, for example, for my friend something like, I don't know, I replaced this with that, and it was also great. Try it, I don't know, like some basic use cases. I was thinking, I don't know how many of you are like familiar with like browser extensions. Like how many of you have tried or read some tutorials on how to like make extensions, but maybe it's seems like people are a bit skilled, so I'll maybe skip the part with the extensions. But if you haven't like had a look at it, I kind of recommend it. Like if you don't know, for example, there are these extensions like I have here, like AdBlock Plus, just like blocks commercials on the pages. I created my own. This was actually the time when we met first. I was tinkering with my first extension, which was this one to just like prevent me from seeing a timeline on Facebook. But all the other pages I can like normally access. Or this one I really like to use, like it just stops GIFs. And you can also use this one. This is this tags that we created. I could actually show you. Yeah, you can. There is this like little icon that's invisible for now, but if you like just click it, it just like toggles like this, and then you don't have these annoying messages there. You can just like you know, normally like see the page as it was. So this is the one way how to do it. Or if you hate this big green T, then yeah, if this appears, this is like the other like, let's say, part of the interface where you log in and log out and do some basic settings. Like for example, I can turn it off like this. Also, this is the other way. Then maybe of course, yeah. Like now, this will take me to the account page of my account, where I can like look for people and manage my messages and friendships and requests and things like that. It's like far from finished, and this is just like very basic design and everything, and the functionality is definitely not finished yet. Yeah, it has like these bookmarks, as you can see, like this. Here are some messages that I left. Yeah, you can see like here's the link where it is, the text of it. the date when it was posted, and then also here my plan is, I'm kind of like responsible now for this part, so my plan is then to put here, of course, like delete message, edit message, blah blah. Yeah, some of those, yeah, this is like, yeah, you can see, yeah, this is not the Falco, but yeah, Gris got campers. This is how it looks. This is just like, you see, H tag with a bit of style. Like, I was actually thinking it would be quite maybe cool and fun project to take some street guys with sprays and give them different tools to create some graffiti, like some HTML and CSS and stuff like this. Yeah, and this Frankenstein looks like this. Yeah, so these are my tags. Here I have friendships, like this is Andre and this is Otto. You can, of course, unfriend them. Here are the requests, like we have some test users. I have this Preeti and Bill Gates as like test users. I was like doing this API endpoints for this friendship business. So I created these two people, and yeah, Bill Gates sent me a friend request so I can accept it or like just tell him I'm sorry. And I sent to this girl. Yeah, it tells me like to wait, and I can also like cancel my request before she wants to like accept it. Here is like, yeah, this will be like to search for users and maybe later some maybe messages with some specific content, but for now it only like you can search for users. And for now I also work with this, that when you just send it empty, it sends you all the users that are in the database, and you see like this is how it kind of looks. And here I can send a new friend request to this guy who was not on the previous bookmarks. Yeah, then one of these bookmarks should be also groups, but when I was personally working on all these like API endpoints for these friendships, I got a bit tired of it. And then the guys came with the idea to create groups, and I said like, yeah, you can create groups. I don't really want to do it myself. I think this groups part will be probably a big business also. Yeah, so there will be one more with groups and some settings here later. I don't know yet what exactly to put there, but something will be definitely necessary. Yeah, and here I log out, and what happens is like the page disappears and the stuff disappears, like this. I was thinking like when we started working on this thing, like I was thinking to give like, I will just take a few more minutes of your time only. We were thinking like what like technologies to use and stuff like that. And I mentioned some things, and I mentioned also this glitch. I don't know how many of you maybe know this glitch.com. Does anyone know? Okay. Like I guess like everyone knows like things like CodePen and JS Fiddle. And the glitch is something similar, but the big difference is that this is the place where you can actually create like your Node.js application, and it just takes like few clicks. You just have to like log in with your GitHub account there. Like I will show you this, yeah, their homepage. It's like colorful, full of cool stuff and things like that. I really like it. I've been using it last year all the time before I kind of learned how to set up like Heroku. So I kind of assume that people here are more in this like learning mindset or learning phase, so maybe it can be useful, and I really wanted to share it because it seems that no one knows it. Yeah, this is how the homepage looks like. These are like my projects, and what they really promote, like what they really want to, yeah, like push is that people create projects, and by default they are like publicly visible by anyone, and you can just like push a button and like clone the project like to your, yeah, like create your own fork and just like change whatever you want, like and they also like put all this stuff like tutorials how to create bots and whatever you can think of. This is how the environment looks like. This is some old like basic project. Yeah, this is like the editor part. Yeah, nothing not familiar. Here are the files. The point is that you just type And the moment when you type, it's immediately like if you would have a phone, for example, next to you or any other computer, it's immediately online. It's not like localhost. You can access it. Anyone, anywhere can immediately access the application that you're like trying to make without all this hassle. Like I don't know how, if for example like local hosting is not enough for you at some point, then and you don't want to hassle, like you are trying something new and you don't want to hassle with like working with Heroku, for example, and all the time like having to commit your stuff to Git and then GitHub and then Heroku like actually deploys it. I think this is like really like long chain, at least as far as I managed to discover how it can work. This is like really immediate and quick, and if you're trying to learn with, I don't know, Mongoose or anything, basically you just like really type it, and the point when you change it, it's immediately like this is the active like page in the application that is deployed. I think it's really like great. I'll maybe like just show you how our project looks like. After some work of 3 guys, it looks like this. This is our README, okay? We need to hire a guy for that, probably. This is just some very basic like setup for all these other things. Yeah, yeah. It's like this is like this is the like the server script. You set up the stuff as you are like used to, and of course it's like a Node.js environment. So you can of course like install like all these Node libraries, and in this case you do it like via this package.json that here are like this is this classical JSON file. And if you look for some new package, then you just type it here, and I don't know what it could be, like anything, just, I don't know, emap, for example. It finds it and it uses just npm. You click on it and it immediately installs it. If you want to look at the documentation, you see it's on npm js.com. You just like see the documentation and you just go on, and it's installed in like a couple of seconds, like just, I think it's easy, like accessible for anyone. This is how I was learning my like Node.js first like things, and I think it can make like things really easy without any like setup of things and stuff like that. You just, it's like CodePen, you just come code. And I'm not paid to do this advertisement. This is, I actually was looking a bit, I didn't find a way how you can pay for using it. I think there is not really a way. This is like a side project of some, it was mentioned elsewhere, of a company called Fog Creek, and they created some of these like Kanban, one of those like more like successful Kanban applications for a team to cooperate. And this is just, yeah, their side project. Here are like, you can of course, like the point is that you collaborate with people. Here are my 3 or actually 2 colleagues now that can access. Like also what you can do is, yeah, advanced options. Yeah, the point thing is like by default, every project is like turned so that it can be publicly accessible by anyone, like meaning like that they can see the code, but you can switch it, like normally it would be like made private. And of course it is like you can connect it to your GitHub. It's like connected to GitHub, but you can create like access to your repository and push and pull like and back up your thing and also download it. And I can now kill the whole project. Yeah, so that's glitch. And then maybe like really extremely briefly about some small plans for the future, like because this is like really very basic prototype, and of course it's only a hobby project. We don't plan to start any startup or something like that, like trying to sell it or like push some advertisements to people through different channels. But we still have like some plans to like kind of bring it to some bit more interesting state. Like now by default, when you post a message, it's accessible to you and your friends, and we also want to do it like the Facebook style kind of, that you can also choose on yourself. Choose also for anyone without any friendships things going on, and also for the groups. Then one of the problems that I really don't like is this. You probably didn't notice, but like when someone would post like any of this like HTML like code instead of a message, and you don't any rule that you don't specify, and it is specified by the page where it gets injected. It just like the style of the page leaks into your things, and sometimes it's really ugly. Like I was struggling a bit with these two things that I was showing you, this Frankenstein and the other thing. So I don't, for example, with this one, I don't really know how to solve yet at all. Like it will be a small challenge to solve that, even though Otto already has some ideas, but we didn't have time to discuss it yet. Then other problem is this URLs. Like you know that sometimes there are parts of the URLs are like these query strings, or for example this campaign like like this question mark UTM Facebook campaign ID blah blah blah, and this is like the links that you cannot really repeat. And if you now I think we store like the whole like URL. This is something that we will somehow need to figure out the way how to do it so that only the relevant part of this URL is like stored. I also personally don't really have any ideas yet how to approach that. And also like as a small challenge is to learn to work with IndexedDB and to be able also to like get rid of those tags when they are read, like to put them into some kind of like bin there so that they are not really visible. And I would prefer not to store this stuff like in the central database, but just on the user's machine. And I really find this IndexedDB in general like quite interesting, like for some offline applications, for example, in general and so on. So I would like to learn to work with that. So that's one of the last ones that I would like to mention. And that's it. Like the repository, like you could have seen on Andrei's slides. If we don't have it, like if you would want to use it, for example, you cannot really find it like among these official like Chrome extensions. It's not there yet because first we are not finished, and second, yeah, you can just like own the repository and use like like if you know how to load the extensions in the development mode, then you just load the folder build, and you can use it. We did some small like change of our database just before Christmas, and we really didn't have time to like really figure out some things, especially with this friendship stuff, which is my part. So friendships will not work for now, but otherwise you can already use it for yourself. And then I hope in the next days I will just fix those server parts that I am a bit responsible for. So that's it. Thanks.